to be talking with you today about the assignment that you had on VP structures. So the VP types we've already covered, and when you view this video, you should have already gone through all of the information about VP types. If you have any doubts, questions about anything with VP types, let me know. But all of this material is going to assume that you know all of the material about VP types. So let's look through each of the examples, and basically I'm going to go through with you how to analyze each example. So you have some of the kids were feeling very sick. So some of the kids were feeling very sick. First thing that you're going to do, of course, is identify the subject of the sentence. So, subject of this sentence is going to be the doer of the action, the person who the sentence is about. So that is some of the kids. This is the subject of your sentence. After that, you don't worry about the subject, because really what you wanted to do in identifying the subject was just define the predicate, because within the predicate, you have all of the structure of the verb phrase. So you have were feeling very sick. This is going to be the predicate of the sentence. And so when you think about this, we're feeling very sick. What's going on here inside this predicate? You know that you're going to have at least a verb group inside every single predicate. Why? Because every single predicate includes a main verb. At least. If nothing else, it will include a main verb. Therefore, you'll have a verb group and a verb phrase. So what is going within the verb group here is going to be the main verb plus the auxiliary verbs. And in this example, feeling is the main verb. Were is functioning as an auxiliary verb. It's helping the main verb. So you know that feeling is the main verb because it occurs to the rightmost within the line of verbs. And therefore, you know everything preceding that verb has to be an auxiliary verb. And then we think about, okay, what's going on with very sick here? What role does very sick play? What is it telling you about? Is it telling you about the feeling? Is it telling you about some of the kids? So if you think about it, you could imagine that very sick is describing some of the kids, right? So it's giving you information about the subject of the sentence. Therefore, it's a subject complement. And you know that whenever you have a subject complement, you're going to have what type? Intensive. So we would label this as an intensive verb phrase, and then you would think to yourself, all right, this is the grammatical analysis in terms of the roles that these guys play in the sentence, but what is the structure of the sentence? So you know that very sick, very is an adverb, and it's telling you about the intensity of sickness. Sick itself is an adjective. So we're going to have an adjective phrase here. And then these are the two pieces of our predicate. That's all we have here. Just the verb group and the adjective phrase. So the verb phrase is comprised of the verb group plus that adjective phrase. And always provide, please, the label for the type of verb phrase, because as soon as you have identified what it is that these different parts of the verb phrase are, you automatically know what it is that the label is going to be. So let's continue. And what we're going to see is that we'll have some instances in which you have material that is optional. When you have optional material, you can leave that out of the sentence, because that is not going to make an important difference in terms of the type of sentence that you have. So let's look at number 2. You have John gave his favorite books to Marcelita. So what's going on here? His favorite books to Marcelita. So the subject of our sentence, who this sentence is about, is John. We're going to pick out John as the subject of the sentence, and then we're going to forget about John, because what we're saying is that that's not part of the predicate. What we're interested in right now is looking at what's going on within the predicate. then we will return to looking at what's happening within the subject. But for now, we're just looking about the predicate. So we have gave his friends books, gave his favorite books to Marcelita. So what's going on in terms of the verbal information? Gave is the only word in this sentence excuse me, that's functioning as a verb. So you know that gave is the complete verb group. It is the main verb plus all the auxiliary verbs, which here include none, right? It's just the main verb. And then we look at his favorite books to Marcelita. So what's going on with this? What is the thing that is given? What is the item that passes from John to Marcelita is the books, right? His favorite books. So his favorite books, in other words, is the direct object. And we know whenever we have a direct object, we always have to have a noun phrase. So by saying that this is the direct object, we know automatically that structurally we're going to have a noun phrase there. That's the only thing that we can have there. Then we have to Marcelita, and we think about, well, what is Marcelita doing in the sentence? She's receiving the books. So she's the one who actually obtains the books from John. So, therefore, to Marcelita is the indirect object. Indirect object is always the recipient of the direct object. Always the recipient of the direct object. And when we think about the form that we have here, to is a preposition, Marcelita is functioning as the complement to that preposition. So we have a prepositional phrase. So all three of these verb group, noun phrase, and prepositional phrase are going to come together to form the verb phrase of the sentence. So these are the three pieces of our verb phrase structure. So always you're going to use the same approach when you're looking at examples with verb phrase structures. First, identify the subject, eliminate the subject. Identify then the predicate, which is going to be the rest of the sentence. Within the predicate, identify the verb group, which is the main verb, and if there are any auxiliary verbs, you're going to identify those two as part of the verb group. Then look at what's following the verb group and determine what are these items. So is this a direct object? Is this a subject complement? Is this an object complement? Etc. On the basis of that, you know the type of verb phrase that you have, and then you look at the phrases to determine what type of phrase you have, prepositional phrase, adjective phrase, and you build those into the verb phrase. So let's look at some more examples. We have, the next sentence is, the young boy who is sitting in the front row cried. Okay, young boy who is sitting in the front row cried. And notice what's going on here with the subject. It's complex, right? Why is it complex? If we ask the question, okay, in this sentence, who is the sentence about? What is the topic of the sentence? You might say the young boy, but then you would ask yourself, well, what about who is sitting in the front row? All of that information is telling you more information about the young boy. So it's part of the subject. It's still part of the subject. In other words, the whole complete subject here is going to be the young boy who is sitting in the front row. So what do we have here? We have a noun phrase, the young boy, and then we have this embedded clause, embedded sentence, who was sitting in the front row. But keep in mind that those types of clauses are just part of the noun phrase that they appear with. So your subject is going to be all of this information, and then actually looking at your predicate, what do you have left? Just cried, which we know is the verb group of the sentence. And it's the only verb that's part of the sentence, therefore the verb phrase here is comprised of just the verb group, including the word cried. So you can have a verb group that is comprised of a single verb, and a verb group comprised of a bunch of auxiliaries, and then the main verb. What type of verb phrase do we have here? Well, since we have nothing following the verb group, we have no complements, it's going to be intransitive. So always provide that label when you're doing the structures for the verb phrases. Let's look at the next example. So you have Jennifer knew the disorderly crowd. Jennifer knew the disorderly crowd. First thing is identify the subject of the sentence. So, Jennifer knew the disorderly crowd. The subject of your sentence, who this sentence is about, is Jennifer. So we know that we're going to leave then that part of the sentence out of our verb phrase analysis. Jennifer is the subject, and that's all we have to say about that. Okay? And then we know that next we're going to have our verb group, so we start looking for our verbs. The only verb we have here is knew, so this is our complete verb group. That's all we have in terms of verbal items here. Then we have the disorderly crowd. What's happening with this phrase? Remember that we had disorderly in one of the examples earlier? And it looks like, it looks like an adverb because it ends in ly. But think about the disorderly crowd. Disorderly is modifying crowd. We know that crowd is a noun because we say the crowds, plural. Therefore, we know that disorderly, although it looks like it has the appearance of being an adverb, is actually serving as an adjective here because it's modifying a noun. So, the disorderly crowd is functioning as the noun phrase being a determiner, the adjective, and a head noun, crowd. And what role does this play with respect to the knowing? It's the thing that was known. The disorderly crowd was known. So therefore, it's taking the action of the verb and is serving as the direct object of the sentence. So the verb phrase is going to be comprised of those two pieces, the verb group, just including the verb know, and the noun phrase, the disorderly crowd. Given that you have a verb group plus a direct object, you know automatically, okay, this is monotransitive. That's exactly what it means to be a monotransitive verb phrase. Okay, just a minute. I'm going to look over here for a marker that's going to work better, hopefully. So let's take a look at the next sentence. Someday I will have this board attached to the wall. Someday. So we have the sentence, all of the players voted Mr. Ethan the president. All the players voted Mr. Ethan the president. First thing, what is the subject? What is the predicate? So the subject of our sentence, you might think, okay, maybe it's just the word all. How would we know whether that is the complete subject? Well, we continue, all of the players. What is this of the players doing? It's giving you information about who are these individuals that we are calling all of them, right? It is all of a certain group of individuals who are the players. So all of the players itself is referring to the subject of the sentence. So this guy is going to be our subject. Everything else is going to constitute the predicate of the sentence. So, voted Mr. Ethan president. You're first going to look for your verb group, which is, or the verbs of the sentence. Here we have just a single main verb, voted. So that is our complete verb group. And then we look at what follows the verb group to say, what role are these guys playing in the sentence? What is the meaning, relationship between these items and the items that come previous? So you have Mr. Ethan, and you think, okay, all of the players voted Mr. Ethan president. In other words, something happened to Mr. Ethan. He was voted, right? In other words, he is the direct object. He's receiving the action of the verb. So therefore, direct object, and we know that a direct object has to be a noun phrase. And Mr. Ethan, of course, is a noun phrase. It's referring to an individual. And then we have this other guy, president. What's going on with president? Well, what did they vote Mr. Ethan to become? They voted him to become president. So president in this example is serving as a modifier of Mr. Ethan because think about it this way. The president is not someone different from Mr. Ethan. It's like if you had the sentence, Mr. Ethan is president. President doesn't describe a different person. So whenever you have that type of noun phrase that doesn't describe someone outside of the sentence, but is really telling you information about someone within the sentence, that's going to be a complement type. In other words, it's either the subject complement, if it's Mr. Ethan is president, or, as in this example, it's going to be an object complement because it's giving you information about the direct object, Mr. Ethan. So, president, as we said, of course, is a noun phrase. Why? Because it's comprised of the noun present. How do you know that president is a noun? You can form the plural, for example. So the verb phrase is going to contain these three pieces: the verb group, the noun phrase, and the noun phrase. In every single instance in which you have a verb phrase, the first unit will always be the verb group. The verb group will always contain the main verb and all the auxiliary verbs. And then following that, you will have the complements of the verb. So given that you have a direct object and an object complement, what is this going to be in terms of its type? It's going to be complex transitive. So this is complex transitive verb phrase. Let's continue looking at the other examples. So for example, you have here, Carrie made a wonderful gift. Okay, there is actually an ambiguity here. So when we talk about ambiguity in linguistics, we're talking about the possibility of multiple meanings. In other words, when I say Carrie made a wonderful gift, it has two possible interpretations. Either it can mean, and this is the more natural interpretation, Carrie was creating a wonderful gift. So let's say she was making a big fruit cake for someone special, and that was what she considered to be a wonderful gift. And so we have the idea that Carrie is the person doing this action of making. And what is the thing that is made? It is the gift, right? A wonderful gift. On that interpretation, a wonderful gift is the direct object of the verb make. It is the thing that gets made. So we would have, in other words, a monotransitive there. However, imagine a world where people give to each other people as gifts, right? So imagine that Carrie herself could have been given away to someone as a gift. This is a very strange situation, and it's very, so you really have to think about it in order to come up with this interpretation. But if you kind of read it that way, Carrie made a wonderful gift, it's something like, oh yeah, that beautiful present made a wonderful gift. That awesome pie made a wonderful gift. It was a wonderful gift. What would you then have? You would have the subject still being Carrie, but then when you look at made, the verb group, and a wonderful gift would be not different from Carrie. You would be identifying Carrie as being, it's really weird because, right, it's an individual, excuse me, as being a wonderful gift. And therefore, you have a subject complement. It's modifying back to the subject of the sentence, and therefore you would have an intensive verb phrase. So, let's look at the example that is more plausible, the one where she actually is creating a wonderful gift, and we'll see what the structure would be with that. So, Carrie made a wonderful gift. Subject is going to be Carrie, so we're going to forget about that part of the sentence. Made a wonderful gift is your verb phrase. We know that the first part of your verb phrase is going to be your verb group, which is consisting here just of the verb made. We have no auxiliary verbs here, so this is it. A wonderful gift. How do we know that this is a phrase? Because you have a determiner, an adjective, and a noun. What did these three all together form? A noun phrase. So this is going to be a noun phrase, and what is it functioning as? Well, it's the thing that is made, that receives the action of making, so therefore it's a direct object. That is the complete verb phrase that we have. The verb group, made, and the noun phrase, a wonderful gift. Since you have a single direct object, you know that the type that you have is going to be monotransitive. So the type of verb phrase here is let's look at some further examples and see what types of varieties we can come up with in terms of the different types of predicates that we see showing up within the verb phrase in English. So if you have something like, the administration answered the question. So on number 7, the administration answered the question. First thing is to identify the subject of our sentence. So, the administration answered the question. So, subject of our sentence, the administration. Then we're going to forget about the subject of the sentence. It's not going to play any role in the analysis of the predicate because the sentence is comprised of the subject on one side, the predicate on the other side. They're separate from each other. So within the predicate here we have the verb group, which is just the verb answer. Why? Because there are no auxiliary verbs here. We just have the main verb answer. And we have that followed by the noun phrase, the question. How do we know that this is a noun phrase? It's a typical structure for a noun phrase because it's the determiner the followed by a noun. So that's what we quite often see with noun phrases. And what is the role that this plays in terms of how it relates to the meaning of the sentence? Well, if you think about it, the administration answered something, and that thing that they answered was the question. So the question receives the action of answering. It's the thing that gets answered. Therefore, the question is a typical direct object, and since you have one direct object and one only, you have a monotransitive verb phrase. And so the structure of your verb phrase is going to include just the verb group and the noun phrase. So keep in mind that it's really important as you're doing these analyses that depending upon the structure that you assign to the phrases that you have in the sentence, you're either going to have the correct or the incorrect analysis of what roles those guys are playing, right? Because if you think that you have a noun phrase, then you will consider, oh, that could be a direct object. That's a very common construction in English to have a monotransitive. But if you analyze something that's actually a noun phrase as being an adjective phrase by mistake, then you're not going to consider that that could be a direct object because you know that if it's a direct object, it has to be a noun phrase. So it's really important to go through slowly and carefully what are each of the individual words that comprise the sentence, and then how do these form units as phrases. So if we look at Paul made a cake for Phyllis. Paul made a cake for Phyllis. So what's going on here with Paul made a cake for Phyllis? The subject is going to be Paul. Paul is the doer of the action. Sorry, he's the individual who is involved in making the cake. Looking at the predicate, what is the verb here? Just, made. So our whole verb group is going to be comprised of just the verb made. And then we have this, a cake for Phyllis. So we have to ask ourselves, well, how do we know whether we have one big phrase there, a cake for Phyllis, or maybe we have two phrases? So we could have a cake, and then we could have for Phyllis. So what you want to do is, in order to determine that, you have to figure out what is the semantic relationship between for Phyllis and a cake. In other words, how does a cake relate to the event of making? The cake is the thing that is made, right? So it's the direct object, and it is a noun phrase, which is what we expect as a direct object. And then let's think about for Phyllis. What's going on here? Well, for Phyllis, Phyllis is the individual for whom the cake was made. In other words, it's intended for Phyllis, right? She's going to be recipient of the cake. Aha. As soon as you have a recipient, you know you have an indirect object. And that is possible because what do we know we have here structurally? We have a prepositional phrase because we have the preposition for followed by the noun Phyllis.